Happy Holy Friday, pretending to be Thursday. Let's all begin this time together in prayer. Let's take a nice deep breath in. Exhale into our hearts. Feel your heartbeat. As we sit in the silence of connecting with our heartbeat, we recognize and acknowledge this amazing opportunity we have to be in this body and on this earth at this time, to be a blessing, to receive blessings, to rise higher, pray harder, love steadily, forgive readily. As we surrender to a place of true, sincere willingness to be told where to go, what to do, what to say, to whom. As we connect and heal with mighty companions, brothers and sisters on this path, strangers, difficulties, difficult circumstances. We just continue to rest in the knowing that it is here for us and that we are here for it. We ask to be good stewards of God's grace, to be a voice of kindness and compassion for ourselves and for others. And we move forward into this time together, knowing that we are open and receptive to the words that are given to us to hear, to receive, to speak, for the greater good of our own growth and for the greater good of our connections with one another. For that and for so much more, we give thanks. Let's take another nice deep breath in. Exhale into this moment. So I just feel like praying. I had this thought that what would it be like if I just stood here praying with you? It's sort of a prayerful feeling day. A beautiful day here in Florida. The rain's finally stopped and settled. The sun is back out. And I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful for so many things. And I want to express that like all the time. It's like there's so many things we can be complaining about. Oh, you know, I spent time with someone. I was just telling the story about a time I spent with a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a long time. We hadn't seen each other, and we keep in touch pretty regularly, but we hadn't seen each other in a long time. And we had an opportunity to meet up. And there were some obstacles to meeting up. And so we just kept getting through those obstacles until finally we were together. And my friend had had a very bad day. So most of our time together was talking about that very bad day. And then we went our separate ways. And on the way home, she ran into some traffic issues and got into an argument with someone on the road. And so she calls me up and she said, I can't believe this day has gotten even worse. And this happened and that happened. And this guy said this, and then I said that. And, you know, she was just continuing the story. And she said, if I journaled like you journaled tonight, I would just fill up all these pages about everything that went wrong today. Just what a bad day it was. And I said, well, instead of filling up all those pages, you can just write one line. And that line can say, tonight I had a really nice dinner with one of my best friends. And she said, yes, that's right. That's right. That can be the way I rethink this. And it occurred to me right then in that conversation that we can rethink everything. We can rethink a bad day. Doesn't mean we didn't have a bad day, but we don't have to dwell on it and dwell in it. We can rest in a knowing that there is another way of seeing. And today's lesson that I'm going to be speaking about is 109, I Rest in God. I love this lesson so much because it's one that we can return to every time we find ourselves resting in our upset, entertaining the bad day story. On and on and on. I mean, you know how these things can take on a life of their own. But instead, we can rest in God. We can rest in a deeper understanding of our own place in the here and the now, in this moment. What can I do with this bad day? How can I rise higher? It's a beautiful lesson. It's what made me think about just praying, because the lesson actually reads like a prayer. It unfolds like a prayer. It starts out by saying, we ask for rest today and quietness unshaken by the world's appearances. We ask for peace and stillness in the midst of all turmoil, born of clashing dreams. And I dare say, clashing psychologies at times, right? Personalities. We ask for safety and for happiness, although we seem to look on danger and on sorrow and on that really bad day. So we're not being asked to pretend that what happened didn't exist. We're not being asked to go hide in the Himalayan mountains and just remove ourselves from the hustle and bustle of our lives. We're asked to see it differently. We're asked to reevaluate what's going on within our own selves. Because sometimes we can just take a little story and turn it into someone else's fault, someone else being the bad guy, as opposed to rearranging our own hearts so that we can see what the opportunity is for our own self to rise above. I rest in God. I rest in God every time I step away from the chaos. Even if it's the chaos of my own mind, even if it's the judgments and the criticisms and the upsets, and can I see it as a way to look deeper within myself? Am I really mad or am I sad? Am I feeling something that needs more nurturing and attention within myself for my own healing? Questions for us to ask ourselves. I rest in God. This thought will bring to you rest and quiet, peace and stillness, and safety and happiness. This thought has power to wake the sleeping truth in you, whose vision sees beyond appearances to that same truth in everything and everyone. Here is a thought in which all of us can be born again in the recognition of ourselves. Now, in A Course in Miracles, born again isn't used in the what would be considered the Christian concept. We're being born again to a new way of seeing, a new way of being, a new way of evaluating what's going on in our own minds. Born again in every moment, born again with every opportunity to see differently, to see with eyes that are not contaminated by our condemnation. I rest in God is on my, I've been wearing this bracelet for years. I rest in God. Now, I don't know how many people have taken what would be considered an ID bracelet and have it inscribed with a lesson from A Course in Miracles. One time I was teaching a class at seminary, Sacred Journey Interfaith Seminary. I was teaching a class on Judaism. And I was talking about the allegory of the movement through 40 years in the desert, and making the correlation to our own lives as we move through difficulties and we move through growth opportunities, how we ourselves can take years and years and years to really get to a place of where we want to be spiritually, emotionally, mentally, even physically. Like, how long does it take to really rest in the knowing of who you are and how you are and who you've become? Not where you want to be, not where you are in the moment, but not who you used to be. You can see a change. You can see an evolution. So I was telling the story about how we ourselves go through the desert. We ourselves wonder at the foot of the stream, will the waters part for us? Will we be able to move through in faith and in trust and resting in God? And I use that term, can we rest in God? And one of my students said, yes, like my bracelet. And my brain immediately started to rearrange what she said because it's on my bracelet. And she said, no, it's on my bracelet. And I said, well, let's see. So we went arm to arm, and sure enough, she had a gold ID bracelet that she had inscribed, I rest in God. what are the chances? What are the chances of two people in the same room wearing bracelets with the exact same lesson? I rest in God. And I don't know what the chances are, probably as for one as of many people as exist, but what it told me right then and there is that everything is brought to us for our own understanding of who we are and what we're dedicated to and who we can be. So there's no coincidence, whether it's a good guy, a bad guy, in quotes, according to your perception, whatever it was, whoever it was, whatever happened, however it happened, it was meant to be. Two people coming together out of all the people in the world, having the exact same bracelet with the exact same inscription is no different than whatever experience you had with whatever other person, people, situations, places that you had it with, for your own understanding of who it is you are in that, through that process of healing, through that process of rising, through that process of understanding that with faith and with trust, you can rest in God. You can rest, even if it's for a moment, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's just that early morning prayer time, if it's a song that you sing or a series of songs, if it's something that you do to allow yourself to connect with the very depth of your own spirit, that is you resting in God. And then as the day goes on, if you have a bell that goes off, as I do 10 times a day, starts at 10:30, goes on till 7:30, every hour, stop. I stop. Take a breath, like the bells of Plum Village. Just stop, take a breath. Ask yourself, where is my mind? Where is my heart right now? Can I take this moment to rest in God right here, right now, regardless of circumstances? That's what we are asked to do. I rest in God completely undismayed. This thought will carry you through storms and strife, past misery and pain, past loss and death, and onward to the certainty of God. There is no suffering that it cannot heal. There is no problem that it cannot solve, and no appearance but will turn to truth before the eyes of you who rest in God. The interpretation and commentary by Ken Wapnick says this: this thought is meant to be practice. This means looking at the daily storm, strife, and misery through loving eyes, through compassionate eyes, through Jesus' eyes, seeing the world differently. Just seeing the world differently than our judgment, our condemnation, our fear. This is the essence of A Course in Miracles, to have the peace and love within be the ways in which we see. Jesus needs us to study and practice his teachings and to be like him, to be what? Beacons of light who call other minds to rest, to be a voice of hope and healing instead of joining in. It's so easy. It's so easy when somebody's upset and they're condemning to just like join in, like I'll condemn too. Oh, and let me tell you my story. But what they're asking us to do is to step back and rest in God instead. To say, instead of I had a really, really bad day, and let me remember and remind you and condemn everyone who was a part of my day, to take that one thing that was a blessing and focus on that and let that be the thing that widens that little space in your heart that seems to have clenched up. Because we have this capability of widening our heart, of expanding our heart and expanding our minds, expanding our consciousness, and going from 1 pint capacity to 5-gallon capacity to be of presence and love. I rest in God. You know, Lauren Daigle has a new song out, and it's called, I highlighted a few of it because I remember the days when we could play songs. Remember, we used to play songs after every lesson and we would all sing along. Can't do that anymore because we got in trouble. We got in too much trouble with Facebook and YouTube. So Lauren Daigle has a new song. It's called Thank God I Do. And the song talks about seeing things come and go. Love walked in, love walked away. How many questions, how many nights and tears and all this sadness. And then she says to God, I don't know who I'd be if I didn't know you. I don't know where I'd go if you ever let go. I've started breathing. The weight is lifted. With you, it's easy. My head is finally clear. There's nothing missing when you are by my side. I took the long road, but now I realize I'm home. With you, I'm home. When we rest in God, we feel at home. We just feel a sense of, I can rest, even if it's for a moment, even if it's before I step back into the chaos of a day, of a really bad day. You can rest in God. You can take a moment away from all of that. In Spanish, there's a word that I talk about in the Bumpy Road to Enlightenment. It's not a commonly used word, but it's something that refers to a sense of home, a fondness for being connected, and it's called querencia. Querencia is defined as nest and a place where a person feels most secure, gains the strength of their character, and feels most at home. So you can feel most at home anywhere at any time. You can notice the strength of your character strengthening by who you are and how you are within whatever it is you're going through. I go on to quote W. Somerset Maugham in a book called The Moon and Sixpence. It was written in 1919. Sometimes a person hits upon a place to which he mysteriously feels that he belongs. Here is the home he sought, and here he will settle amid scenes that he has never seen before, among people he has never known, as though they were familiar to him from birth. Here at last he finds rest. Here at last we find rest. We can rest in God. We can rest in our spiritual connection. Oh, I heard this great story. I don't know if I've told it before, but it just came to me, so it bears repeating, hopefully. I heard this guy speaking. He was from Uganda, but he does these little pop-up churches on the beach. And he was telling the story about having to go back to Uganda because there was a death in his family. And so he planned on going, being there for the funeral and coming back. And so he packed very lightly. He just had like a carry-on bag. So he gets to Uganda, he does what he has to do. And on his way back, he has to stop in Istanbul. When he gets to Istanbul, he's arrested. And he doesn't know what's going on. He needs somebody to help translate. He doesn't speak the language. So they bring a translator in. And they say, you're being arrested for drug possession. And he said, but what drug possession? So apparently, somebody who was watching him knew that he didn't have any bags. So they checked in some boxes in his name. And when the boxes were examined, they had drugs in them. So he says, well, those weren't my boxes. And they're like, the interpreters, saying, well, they don't believe you. Anybody can say they're not your boxes. So you're in big trouble. And looks like 25 years in prison. So you need to make a deal of some sort. And he says, I'm not going to make a deal. They're not my boxes. They're not my drugs. I did not bring drugs into this country. So the interpreter's, talking, and he says, listen, this is not the kind of system you want to mess with. You've been marked as guilty for bringing these drugs in, and you're going to jail for 25 years unless you make some kind of a deal. You need to say that you're guilty and make some kind of a deal with them. We'll work it out financially, and maybe you'll get fewer years. And he said he took some time to pray, and he felt such a strong sense of presence. He was resting in God. He was resting in trust. He was resting in an understanding that whatever was happening needed to happen. He wasn't going to fight it. He wasn't going to fight them. He was just going to trust the process. And he said to the interpreter, tell them that this will be resolved by tomorrow, and I will go home. So the interpreter says, well, that's really not going to happen. You need to say you're guilty and we'll make a deal. He said, no, I'm not going to say I'm guilty because I'm not. And this will be resolved by tomorrow. And you know what? If it's not resolved by tomorrow, maybe it'll be resolved in a few weeks. And if it's not resolved in a few weeks, then it'll be resolved in 25 years. With such peace within, he was just like, I am resting in God. And he said the reason he felt so at peace was because he truly felt this presence. Instead of being in his upset, instead of being in his panic, instead of being in a fight, he just felt this presence of spirit within him. And he knew that as long as I can feel that presence, then I can rest in God. As long as I can feel connected, then it doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter if I'm wrongly accused and spend 25 years in prison. The rest of us would be like, yes, it's wrong. No, we have to. But he was just like, whatever happens, I'm connected. I feel God's presence. I feel God's grace. So the next day came, and sure enough, they found the actual culprits of the drugs, and he was let go. But he was willing to just rest in God, to just rest in whatever occurs, whatever it was that was going to happen, as long as he could feel that connection, just like the song says, as long as I can feel that you are there, that you're holding me close, that there is nothing else other than this feeling of wanting to be home in you, with you. As you close your eyes tonight, sink into stillness, rest, find respite, reassure your mind that all its franticness was just a dream of a fever that has now passed and has now been healed. Just believing that, just if we just believe that for a moment, if we can just have a moment's rest, you will be faithful to your trust today. Be faithful to your trust. Resting in God is knowing, is a place of knowing. It's like, it's not even saying, I trust, I have faith. It's just, I know that there is a peace within me that I can access even under the worst of circumstances. So we have to be faithful to our trust. That's what it says. Be faithful to your trust. Forget no one. Bring everyone into the boundless circle of your peace, the holy sanctuary where you rest. The holy sanctuary where you rest is this place of peace where you can call people in with your mind, with your prayers, with your understanding that whatever they did, however they were, however we were, that there was a purpose and there is an ultimate healing that can take place because we want to rise higher. We are here to bring peace and love into the world, into our world, every circumstance, because with peace and love, we can change the world. With peace and love, we are making a new world. And in that new world, we rest in God. Just like my bracelet says. Rest in God. Be with me in this understanding. Be with me in this rising higher as we face all of life's circumstances with a loving heart and an open mind. God bless you.